This is the news in detail on the hour from the WOR newsroom. Fire and explosions have ripped through an ammunition storage area at the rear of the Saigon headquarters of South Vietnam's national television network. First reports say one South Vietnamese was killed, 3 others were injured. The incident occurred shortly before United States Ambassador Ellsworth Bunker and columnist William F. Buckley were to appear at the studios. Reporters at the scene said the explosions apparently were accidental. Champagne flowed in Brussels, Belgium tonight as British and European Common Market officials finally completed their negotiations to make Britain a member. Talks have been going on for nearly 19 months, with the last point of disagreement revolving around British imports of farm products from the continent. Ultimate agreement had been a foregone conclusion since last June. Treaties are expected to be signed on Saturday, making Britain, Denmark, Ireland, and Norway members as of next January 1st. Congressional action will be sought to put an end to the Pacific Coast dock strike, which resumed today after last-minute negotiations failed to bring a settlement in the long-standing dispute. Pickets are marching again at the 16 ports, which were shut down last year in a 100-day strike and then halted on October 6th by a Taft-Hartley injunction. Labor Undersecretary Lawrence Silberman says that congressional action is the only means left to stop the strike. The administration will ask the Congress either to extend the time period of the injunction or submit the dispute to a so-called final offer selection board. House Republican Minority Leader Gerald Ford says he is certain that the Congress will take action to stop the West Coast dock strike.
I would expect that if the strike continues, there will be action by the Congress in a relatively short period of time. Congress goes into session on January 18th. This kind of legislation in the past has been handled rapidly by the House and the Senate, and in this emergency, this crisis, I would expect Congress would respond very quickly.
A nationwide strike by air controllers in Canada has virtually closed down that country's 116 airports, and the walkout also disrupted overseas flights into and out of New York's Kennedy Airport when planes were forced to fly more southerly and longer routes as a result of the Canadian strike. Flights from Europe to Montreal and Toronto were diverted to other airports, including Kennedy, with passengers then put on buses for their Canadian destinations. A spokesman for Canada's transport minister said there is a possibility that the Parliament might be recalled to deal with the problem. Canadian air controllers are demanding parity with their American air colleagues. The moans and groans emanating from the Park Sheraton Hotel in Manhattan today were coming from citizens testifying before the Metropolitan Transportation Authority Board on the proposed fare increases for the Long Island Railroad. Railroad says it wants to close a $10.4 million deficit gap by increasing fares 20% on average, but many commuters said that average is a little misleading. Many riders would be stuck with a 130% increase. About 100 citizens appeared before the board, warning of boycotts, new welfare clients, and a loss of Manhattan business, all resulting from a fare increase. Walter Kleinscourt of the Hempstead Commuters Association suggested that the board has already made up its mind to grant the fare increase, but MTA Chairman Dr. William Ronan denied the charge, saying that the board has an open mind on the fare increase request. Betty Smith, author of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, died today at Shelton, Connecticut. She was 75. The book, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, was published in 1943, became an American literary classic describing the author's childhood in Brooklyn. The novel was an immediate success. It brought in an estimated $1 million. Royalties from its sale continued to pour in years after it was published. It was eventually made into a successful motion picture. We'll have more news after this note. Governor Nelson-Rockefeller delivers his State of the State address to a joint session of the state legislature tomorrow, amid rumblings that lawmakers intend to cut even further the governor's so-called austerity budget. Legislative budget hearings will start soon, and Albert Roberts, Secretary of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee, says the budgets of state departments and agencies will get very close attention, with particular notice given to programs of low priority. The governor's message tomorrow, to be broadcast by WOR at 1 p.m., is expected to carry out the somber tone of the budget but is not expected to include any new major state programs. Firemen are continuing to battle a blaze in a Patchogue, Long Island factory tonight, although the fire was officially declared under control at 5 p.m. More than 300 volunteer firemen from 30 Suffolk County communities fought the blaze for 4 hours in sub-freezing temperatures. The flames, apparently fed by plastics inside the 3-story building, sent billowing smoke over the business district, visible for 10 miles. The factory provided the principal occupation for the residents of Patchogue. Cause of the fire is not known. A number of firemen were treated for frostbite and smoke inhalation. However, there are no serious injuries. Relatives of Mrs. Jackie-Onassis, who live on Long Island, were involved in court action today. That story from WOR's Henry George.
The lawyer for an aunt and cousin of Mrs. Jackie-Onassis today accused the Suffolk County Health Department of illegally threatening them with eviction from their 28-room mansion in East Hampton, Long Island. The Health Department, in turn, charges that 76-year-old Mrs. Edith Bouvier-Beale and her 54-year-old daughter are living in what they call indescribable filth. In State Supreme Court in Riverhead, Attorney Joseph Lagututa said the law does not give health officials jurisdiction in the case. He also charged that inspectors visited the home on 3 separate occasions without a proper search warrant. Lagututa said, "My clients have their own lifestyle, and the county has no right to impose another on them." Assistant County Attorney Donald Rattaliata insisted that both state and local health laws permit the county to intervene in the case. Justice Thomas Stark reserved decision. Until he makes his ruling, the county is enjoined from pressing the eviction proceeding. From Long Island, this is Henry George for WOR News.
A huge international drug ring which used cars to smuggle heroin into the United States was broken up today with the arrest of 16 people in France, Canada, and the United States. 9 other suspects are still being sought. The operation, according to authorities, brought in an estimated $293 million worth of heroin from France during the past 2 years. The 2 Americans indicted were both from the Bronx, 48-year-old Louis Cirillo and 27-year-old John Astudo. Cirillo is in custody, but Astudo, who also uses the name of Salvatore Rizzo, is still being sought. Attorney General John Mitchell said the heroin was hidden inside expensive cars in Europe. When the autos reached America, they were taken to garages where the concealed heroin was removed. New York telephone bills will be going up soon. The Public Service Commission today granted a nearly $161 million rate increase to the New York Telephone Company, which will hike rates about 9%. The new rates are in addition to a $190 million temporary rate increase approved last July. The Commission admitted that the increase was large, but said the money was needed to improve the telephone system. Rate increases cannot take effect until the company files detailed rate schedules with the PSC. Young Russians visiting the United States apparently like what they see, and they have apparently fallen into the habit of walking off with merchandise. The latest incident revealed today involved a 19-year-old member of the Soviet national hockey team, which played here in New York recently and who visited Corvettes in Manhattan about 10 days ago, saw a sports jacket he liked, stuck it under his arm, and walked out of the store. Alexander Volkvon was grabbed by a store security man. The Russian signed a statement of guilt, but store officials said they didn't want to make a big deal out of it, and they did not press charges. Earlier this month, 2 Russian students were caught shoplifting in Berkeley, California. One of them slashed his throat and wrists while he was en route to Kennedy Airport for his return to the Soviet Union. The judge compared them to a Benedict Arnold or a Judas. Federal Judge John Cannello is referring to 2 former New York City police narcotics detectives who were sentenced for conspiring to sell cocaine while they were allegedly fighting the narcotics traffic. 41-year-old Charles Kelly of Comac, Long Island, and 36-year-old Raymond Imp of Staten Island appeared in Manhattan federal court today following their conviction for a second time after the reversal of the first trial. The judge, after admonishing the pair, sentenced them to 8 years in prison. More news after these notes from our WOR community calendar.